Hi everyone, welcome to EX-HALE Online with Poavi, and it's an amazing, beautiful day in the month of August. I don't know about you, but the rains have done us well. I love the cool weather. I don't know what you're experiencing where you are right now, but for me, where I am, I'm enjoying a very beautiful, not too cold, not too warm, just perfect weather. And I'm hoping that you're experiencing what I am as well. So, how'd you enjoy service today for those of you who went to church and for those of you who watched online or stayed at home? Or maybe you're not a Christian. Hope you've been having a great Sunday so far. So if you have, I'm really happy to hear that. Okay, so we've been talking about breaking unhealthy patterns, and on Wednesday we kind of slid into, breaking unhealthy sexual patterns, and I gave a little brief introduction regarding unhealthy sexual patterns, and we said, what are unhealthy sexual patterns? Unhealthy patterns that bring about the same negative effects or the same negative consequences. And I remember saying that sex is a beautiful thing, but its design and original intent is for the married couples. And if you are not a married couple and you are engaging into sexual activities, then and it becomes a routine or a pattern, then that's what we will refer to as unhealthy. Because for a married couple who are in marriage, it's supposed to be a beautiful thing. So that pattern is encouraged. But when it's done outside of marriage, it becomes unhealthy, one, because of the kind of consequences that come along with it, which we will be talking about in the course of this particular discussion. Now, I want to throw it off by asking just a simple question, and I'm sure at some point in time, most of us, especially those of us who have been, who are more matured and have been in the dating game for a season, probably it has happened. Have you ever found yourself, repeating a circle in relationships, or decisions or choices that you made in a relationship? Even when you know it hurts you, you find it very, very, very difficult to break free from that pattern or from that that continuous circle or that particular, let's call it a circle, right? It's like a loop. You tell yourself you're not going to do it again. You promise, you even swear that you're not going to do it again. And for some reason, you find yourself making that same decision over and over again that gives you the same outcome over and over again, and most of the time it's on the negative. If you found yourself like that, please just let me know and just say, okay, I've been there, so that I know that I'm not alone in this. One of the things that we have discovered in this particular generation that we are in is that sex, like I said on Wednesday, is like a dime a dozen. It's just out there. It's on your face. It's everywhere you go. It's on your social media platforms. It's in your schools. It's on the street. It's in the home. It's everywhere you go. And unfortunately, most of what we see in this generation as regarding to sex is against the principle and the original design and intention that God had for it in the first place. So what we have in this generation would be unhealthy patterns of sexual behavior all over the place. Somebody would say, but I'm not engaging in the act directly, but you're promoting it by putting your body out there, by putting your mind out there in terms of vulgar conversations or pornography or whatever it is that we do out there these days that we feel we get a kick from doing. I've seen a lot. I'm one that sees a lot on social media. Some of the things that I see these days are so heartbreaking. They're so painful, because when I was growing up, I was meant to understand that sex was supposed to be a sacred thing. Now, aside that, one of the things that I grew up understanding about sex, as it were, is that sex, especially a woman, your body is sacred. Your body is something that should be adorned when it is unveiled in marriage. But now it's all out there, and everybody sees it free of charge, you know. And like my mom would say when we were growing up, and you know, you would wear maybe an attire that was just revealing a little bit too much that it's supposed to be, she would always make this statement, and I took note of that statement, which is, what you're willing to show, you're willing to share. And unfortunately, in this generation, we have a lot of people who are not just wanting to show it, but they're actually telling you, come, I want to share it. And those are the things that we are going to be talking about within this season, because these are the things that give birth to unhealthy patterns of sex, as it were. Now, one of the things I wanted us to start off with is, first and foremost, understanding patterns and understanding unhealthy sexual patterns as they were. What are the things that, you know, give birth to unhealthy patterns? One of the things I have discovered as a child growing up is that so many things are responsible for unhealthy sexual patterns. One of the things would be peer pressure. You know, I remember way back then, and this was not even in high school or secondary school. I'm talking about way back in elementary, which would be like primary school, if you're in Africa here. And in my elementary school, you would see little kids exploring, you know, trying to kiss one another, you know, talking about playing mom and dad, and then, of course, trying to do what mom and dad do. And these were things that they were doing in secret and in hiding. But every time little kids got together and they were discussing, you would always hear, oh, guess what I saw? Well, I saw my mom and dad doing this, or mom and dad were watching this. And because they didn't know I was there, so they were just watching it, and this is what they were doing. So it just looked like it was something that should be done. And most little young children have been exposed to that. And the funny part of it, and I think the part that hurts me the most, is that those of us who saw these things when we were growing up, well, I didn't see my parents, but, you know, there were teenagers all around me who were all into stuff like that. And, you know, those of us who saw it and knew the consequences that it had on us, most of us as parents, you know, end up making the same mistake. You know, you have kids out there, you are, perhaps you're not living in a very large apartment. I always ask people, for those who have like a room and parlor and you have young kids, how do you engage in sexual activities with your spouse right under the vision or the visual environment of your children? They are seeing it. You think they're asleep, but kids are funny. And I'm sure you will remember when you were a kid. There were things that your parents would think you were sleeping and you were finding yourself doing, or you found yourself sneaking around the house and trying to see, right? And we end up doing these things as parents in this generation. When I say we, I'm talking about the general context right now, because I don't want to remove myself from it. But you see, most parents have exposed their kids to these level of images that have become like a photograph in their memory. And now most of these children have gone and they want to practice. It may not be parents, it may even be siblings. I remember, I think it was like a few years ago, I had a neighbor, and my neighbor was always very busy. He was working at a particular government establishment, so he was most of the time out of the house, and so also the mom. And so one of these days, my kids would always like go to play, and of course, their male son, you know, was trying to misbehave with my little daughter. And the funny part of it was when I was told I was so upset, but when the mom heard, the mom just started, she was beating him up and all that. And I told her, stop. This is not going to help. You beating this child is not what's going to help this child. First things first, we need to know, where did the child pick up this behavior? Because if we do not know the root cause, we cannot help him. He's this very young minor. No, I'm not talking about a teenage kid. I'm talking about somebody in primary school, right? And so when we had that talk and we discovered that he found out, or he learned that from his elder brother, or the mom's younger brother who was living in the house, who had become like an elder brother to them, because apparently when the parents were out of the house, he would bring his girlfriend over, and he would lock them in the room or tell them to go and sleep, and they thought they were sleeping, but these kids were watching. Now that became a visual image for that child, and that child felt, well, if uncle is doing it and he looks like he's having fun, I want to try it. And so you find a little young girl. Unfortunately, my daughter was the young girl in the house. And thankfully, just when he was thinking about it, we had walked in and caught them, and caught him rather, attempting that. And you see, I learned that, you don't overlook these things and assume that the child does not know what they're doing. Most of these kids, you'd be amazed, especially in this particular generation. When I tell you that sex is out there all over their faces, it's in their textbooks, it's online. Most of you give your kids phones, you give them iPads, you give them iPhones, you give them tablets. They have systems. You're not always there to monitor what these kids actually go at. Well, thank God for those that put, the child lock and, the limits and all that. But these kids are not as dumb as you think they are these days. They have a way of beating the system. Now, it's even worse when we shift from elementary school and start talking about, high school. I remember on Wednesday, I was telling you about a young guy who his nanny was the one that started molesting him as a little boy, at the age of, I think, 6 or thereabout. And, because he was sleeping in the same room with her mom and dad, as far as they're concerned, is auntie this person. So they were so naive about it. They'd go to bed, and this girl would mess this young boy up. And it continued, like I told you, till he became an adult. And at 14, couldn't sleep in his own room alone, would find his way into her room and have sex with her and go, because he now became addicted to it. And it's like, if I didn't have it, something was wrong. And thank God for this young man, because at the time I was talking to him, of course, he was a Christian, born again, he's an adult, he's a man now and everything. But like he told me, he said, look, it took God to be able to tame that part of him. And he's so deliberate about helping himself break that pattern. That's it took a lot for him to be able to break that pattern. And like I told you, my dad of blessed memory would tell me, sex is sweet, just don't start, because if you start, it's very difficult for you to stop. And you see, that's the problem. Exposing them and making their minds to envision these things arouses their curiosity. And because they see that obviously this thing does not cause pain, it's something that parents look like they're enjoying. So that these children engage into it, or they practice with themselves. God forbid that it should be siblings practicing on one another, or you have someone in the house. Now, I told you when we used to have this program called True Experience, and I think I'm gonna have to resume that very soon. I had a lot of them, and most of the guys that attended, every time we asked them, how did you lose your virginity, I would always hear, it was at home, my nanny, my mom's friend, auntie this person, my neighbor, a classmate of an elder brother, elder sister. So they're all around, and these people introduce our children to what becomes a very unhealthy pattern of sexual behavior. And you find out that these children, as they grow up, they find it very, very difficult because, like I said, sex now is everywhere you go. So these children see it. It becomes like something that is a part of their daily life. And unfortunately, most parents are too busy to actually put their radars on the child. And you know, I remember when we talked about, let's talk about sex, I said something, and you know, one or two people were asking me, oh, but why did you say so? Most of the time, our concentration and you know, our emphasis are always on the female child because we assume that it's the female child that needs to be monitored. But like I told you, our male children are most vulnerable because most of the time your nannies are females, and these females, you do not know what they come with. You know, I'm not saying be suspicious about everyone that comes in your house, but be suspicious about everyone that comes around your children, because you are supposed to be custodian of these children, and what they see or what they experience as a young child has a way it affects them as adults. Some of us, unfortunately, were molested as little kids, but guess what? You know, if not for the grace of God, for some of us, most of us, our lives would have been in shambles. But because there is grace and there is God, for those of us who are Christians, there is a way he dealt with me on the inside, right? But these consequences are ongoing in the lives of so many. We have many children right now, many adults right now. And for some, it may not really be that, oh, I was exposed to sexual behaviors as a child. Some are just childhood traumas, you know, negligence of a parent or abandonment of a parent, or something that makes the child feel as if they are unseen or unheard, or you are a parent that abused your child physically. Now, I'm not talking about, because the ones that I hear these days of parents sleeping with their own children, I can't even place my hands on that. I don't even know how to start thinking about what level of perversion or occultism or witchcraft would make me right now to look at my son and decide to sleep with my son. It just doesn't make sense. But we have parents who are doing it for whatever reasons they think they are benefiting from that. But whatever it is, if you're a parent who is doing this, please, before the wrath of God visits your home, please leave that child alone. Go and look for somewhere and ask God for forgiveness. Go and change your life and find a way to heal that child or that thing that you're doing, because you're putting that child in a place where they're not going to come out from easily. But like, I just had to vent that out, because I mean, I heard something recently that just blew my mind. But, you know, most of them are physical abusers. Like I said, it's not really sexual abuse. You're the type that beats your child. You're the type that, you know, traumatizes your child, either with terrible words or, you know, just afflicting all sorts of emotional pain around that child's life. Now, that child grows up, and that child becomes, you know, a very angry child. Some would say narcissist. If it's a narcissist, it's even better. But then we have some children who become psychopaths, and they go around looking for, you know, I don't know, there's this true story that was, it was turned into a movie, and I was able to watch it. It was about this white guy, right, who had this psychotic issue, because he had a very serious trauma issue as a child growing up with his mother. Now, his father, he didn't know who his dad was, but his mom was alive. She traumatized him. She was beating him. She was abusing him. She would lock him in the basement. She did all sorts of terrible things to that little boy. Now, this young boy grew up with that anger, with that hatred, with that bitterness, with that resentment, and decided that every lady who looked, you know, or had the same features with his mom, He would kidnap her, take her to the basement, rape her, molest her. When he was done, kill, and he was just storing their bodies. Meanwhile, I think the mom was elderly at the time. He had tied her to the basement and made her to watch, and he would be telling her things like, you did this, you did this. The mom was blonde-headed, I guess, so every lady he kidnapped, had blonde hair or something. And I got to thinking, and I asked myself, how this was a real life story. I mean, eventually they caught him, and he was sentenced for life in jail and all that, and I'm guessing he's probably still there because he probably is, but I got to thinking, and I asked myself, how many of these young men do we have out there? How many of these young women do we have there? Because somebody said, okay, well, that's a man. Who told you that women don't go through it through? When you abuse her, you molest her, you put her through that emotional trauma, and she grows up bitter and angry, and then she goes around, and what she does is she sleeping out with men and doing all sorts of things. There's just so many things that are affiliated with childhood trauma, sexual exposures, that we have no idea the consequences these things have, and they become very, very unhealthy pattern. There's nothing healthy about a person growing up and deciding to become a rapist because they were raped as a child. So that anger, that bitterness, and for someone like me, I can relate with that anger. I can understand the pain. I can understand the frustration, because it's being raped is not something that people just assume, oh, it's just sex. So it happened. You should just no, there is something that happens when you are a child, and that level of innocence is taken from you by someone else who, when you find out what led to that, it's somebody who also is a victim of something that happened to them right from childhood that brought about that. It could be the peer pressure from friends who I was talking to a friend of mine who happens to be a pastor now by the grace and mercy of God, and was telling me in secondary school, back then when he got himself into a bad set of friends, and they were into raping young ladies, and I asked him, how did he was like, honestly, at that time, he cannot explain what gave the joy or what gave the push, but they were doing it, and now as an adult, he's grown, he has realized that he's a pastor. And I asked him, so how will you meet somebody and the person is telling you, this is what I went through? How do you bring that level of comfort to that person, knowing that once upon a time you did this kind of thing to such a person? Now there's so many traumatic instances that I cannot even begin to explain to you how painful childhood rape or molestation or abuse domestically is for a child. Most of the children we see in this generation, and if parents would be sincere, I remember when we had a teenage Bible school some time back, we were talking about some certain things with parents, and I asked the parents, I said, how many of us can honestly be sincere that at our age, when we were the ages of our kids, did not go through some form of sexual molestation or brutalization? There was not one hand that went up, because everybody sitting in that hall at one point in time had experienced something like that. Because people don't come out and talk. People's stories are not written on their faces. So it's very, very difficult for you to understand what people are carrying underneath all that smile that they have on a daily basis. Some people are just trying on a daily basis to see that they get through that day, without remembering, and it gives birth to so many other unhealthy patterns that we will be talking about eventually. But for you to understand the magnitude, I'm talking about childhood now and peer pressure influence, because there are other triggers that begin the whole pattern of sexual abuse, but these are the most common. Childhood, because many children cannot voice out. Either they're being threatened by one aunt, one uncle, one elder brother's friend, one elder sister's friend, one guy by the store that you keep sending your little child to go and get stuff from, just so many things. And unfortunately, you would think that these kids do not know. Now, somebody said, okay, well, I checkmate my kids. I do not allow nannies, or I do stuff for myself, or I come back and I check my children. Okay, that's fine. You do all that. But do you take time to go through that phone, that tablet that you give those children? Because like I told you, these little kids are not as tiny as you think they are. I was telling someone very close to me, and her little daughter at that time, I think, must have been like 7 o'clock, and the 7 years old, sorry, forgive me, and she had a very good phone, like an Android phone, and this girl was already on. She had an Instagram page that she created for herself, a TikTok page that she had created for herself. She dances. That's her to go to thing. And because the parent was not somebody who was given to social media, the parent had no idea. But of course, because I'm on social media and I know her, so somehow she sent me a friendship request and I accepted. So I was talking to the parent and I was telling them, but do you know that your child is on Instagram? Do you know she's on TikTok? And there was this look of surprise on their faces. So if you don't even know that your child is on social media, you have no idea what they're doing. How do you know who they're chatting with? How do you know who is sending them photos? How do you know what's going on with that child? And that's just one of the million of ways that these unhealthy sexual patterns begin in the life of a little child. And because you are not a very vigilant and a very observant parent, especially this our so-called new generation, new school parenting that we do, where we feel, we don't want our children to go through the things we went through, so you let them get away with murder. They're doing all sorts of things and you have no idea. You don't know who their friends are in school. You don't know what their friends are up to. I remember when we were having this conversation about let's talk about sex, there was this particular conversation, and I told you of a young father who felt he was having this bond with his son. So every morning they take their bath together. He would bathe with his son, prepare the son, take the child to school. And unfortunately, the child got to school and was talking about the father and how the father's private was big and all that. And then the father comes to pick up the child and, the little kids are giggling in class. You would think that these kids are so innocent. These kids know what they're doing. And then one of the smart Alex had the nerve to go and ask the father, sir, is it true that this, and this? So you don't know what these kids see. Don't be the reason why these kids see things. Don't be a mother. You're bathing with your boys. What are you doing? And you think that is a bond? If you don't know, that is a form of child abuse. For you to even do that and expose your body parts to a minor, what are you doing? It's not parenting. It's not bonding. That is the wrongest way to bond. You are exposing this child to images that they will eventually want to explore. And when they want to explore, they're not going to explore with you. They're going to take it outside. You have started a pattern and a trend in that child's life that you should not. So I don't know. This was not really how today's was supposed to go. It was supposed to go this way. But for some reason, I feel that a parent out there needs to hear this, or a big brother or big brother, aunt or a guardian, you need to hear this. Let's protect these little ones. Let's keep them. Let's secure them. Most of the time, we are so busy We have no idea the things that go on under our roofs. Oh my God. God will bless one of my friends in the past who, I can't remember whether it was a song or a book he wrote, and the book was Sex is Happening Right Under Your Roof. You have no idea. It was not until I grew up and I was telling my mom, oh, this and this and this happens to me because you didn't take note, you didn't checkmate this uncle who was always coming around and claiming he chose time when you guys were never around to always come around, and this was and she was shocked, she was hurt, she felt bad, she kept on, and I told her, I said, it's not your fault, you didn't know better. But you see, having known this, I cannot allow these things happen to my minors under my watch, not because of that. So I am appealing to parents, open your eyes. Don't be the reason why your child begins to have an unhealthy pattern, and don't expose your children to them by just being negligent about the things that go on around you. I want to stop here. My time is far spent, but I need to throw a shout out to a couple of people. Thank you, Nazena Leo, for watching. I appreciate you. Thank you, Gideon Spinoza Gambo. I thank you. I appreciate you. I see your comments. He says parenting ignorance. He also says that's true. And exposing minors to privates. Yes, it's a very, very serious thing that most parents feel, this generation of parents feel it's a bonding process. I don't have a problem with spouses taking their bath together. You're two adults, but we're not. Why would, me and my husband are bathing, we're bringing in our little children, to shower with us. It's a family bonding thing. No, you're abusing that child mentally, emotionally, sexually, in every way possible. Please, let's stop. Let's stop this new generation of parenting. There's nothing wrong with doing it the old school way. Let children understand boundaries. Let children understand this is where we draw the limits. My body is a private thing. It's not a public thing. Not even mommy or daddy should feel so comfortable, around my privates. And the moment we do that, we will raise healthier children in this generation. Thank you, T.Y. Jiboye, also for watching. And thank you, everyone. I see you coming and going. I appreciate you. We're going to continue on Wednesday. And by the grace of God, I'll be able to follow my notes and my script accurately without allowing myself getting emotional. Because for me, this particular topic is so emotional for me because I see the damage that is going on in the lives of children. And no wonder this generation of children are so exposed to so many sexual things. I'm going to stop here, and I pray to God that parents are watching, parents are listening, and we are learning so that we can help these little ones to be healthy children with healthy patterns as they grow up sexually. So till I come your way again on Wednesday by 5:30 p.m. By the way, if you have not yet liked and subscribed to our YouTube channel, it's EX-HALE Online with Pravi. Please go like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends about it, and let's do all that. Thank you so much, Gideon. I see your message. He says thank you for sharing these truths. Now, God bless you, and thank you for what you and your wife are doing. I commend you guys as well. God bless every one of you till I see you again on Wednesday by 5:30. Be the reason why someone has a smile on their face and not want to die. God bless you.